So let's address some of the criticism that maybe you didn't do enough. That if you're going to do deficits, really go after it for the business community, corporate taxes, take an axe to regulations. And you do that in certain ways. Some tax rates do go down, but if you really wanted it to be sweeping and not just competitive with the US, but ultra, really go after it with tax cuts and reducing regulation.
Well, I think the first thing, I agree with your characterization of budgets, and it's a balancing act. One of the things that comes, let me break this into a few points. One is we are spending a lot less. Basically, we're stopping spending growth, but we are investing at the same time. We made a big effort, $60 billion of savings that we're finding in order to preserve what makes Canada Canada, the social programs, the federal-provincial relationship. So we preserve those, and we're using our fiscal room, our fiscal space to invest. And it is big. It is big. It's far and away the biggest investment in defense, far and away the $450 billion cash investment equivalent over the next 5 years. That is enormous. Providing so there's certain things that we do that is our responsibility. And what we're determining with the provinces, with input from the private sector, with input from other stakeholders, is where are we going to get the highest return for doing that? That's the first element. But the vast, vast majority of the investment that's catalyzed by this budget is decided in rooms like this and the organizations that you represent, because it's the productivity superdeduction. That's just like somebody has to decide to build the data center, the infrastructure, the ITC. Again, looking at the table here, Bruce Power has to decide what they want to do in terms of expanding their generation fleet. So most of it is decided by the private sector. We've just advantaged it tremendously.
So when they've already made the decision to go ahead, you're at least expediting all the checks that you need to do.
In many cases we are, but we're also just making the economics of it.
But there are people, this, that just...
Such a downer.
You did a great job, but Riley, I'm going to bring us all back down to earth. You know that there are people...
we're not coming back. No. Amber.
I don't want to
Amber,
be there
no,
either.
like that. We've had too long down, looking down, not taking risk. This is like this. The risk is not to take risk. In a situation like this, you've got to decide where you're going. And we got to put capital to work in the country. So you bring us down. Okay, with that.
I'm not going to bring you down. Yeah. I'm going to say, why can't we go even higher? Let's use the energy sector as an example. Yep. There are a lot of things that are preventing them from even bringing a major project to your office, according to them. Bill C-69, emissions cap.
Nope.
I mean, that's what they say.
That's what they say, but they're wrong.
Why?
Yeah, they're wrong. No, they're wrong, because literally we are getting projects coming in. We're in discussions with the province of Alberta directly on things. But look, we've also got a view that, as shared by the government of Alberta in the grand bargain, I'm going to quote the Premier of Alberta, that the future of oil export is going to be low carbon. So twinning additional, in that case, oil sands development with carbon capture makes sense. By the way, it also helps create a multi-billion-dollar industry for Canada.
One of my questions was, is this pipeline going to come?
It's so boring.
It's not actually.
It is. It is because don't worry, we're on it. We're on it.
And
but there is this whole world.
Party?
Okay, hands up. Who's working on the pipeline in this room? Okay.
Isn't that a problem?
No. Look at all the variety. Nav, we have.
Yeah, if there's more prosperity, they'll get more cell phone services.
But look. Okay, so what's going to drive one of the things? Don't worry, we're on the pipeline stuff. Danielle's on line 1. Don't worry, it's going to happen. But something's going to happen. Let's put it that way. It's not very good negotiating by my perspective. But what some in the room will unlock on the data center side, the intelligence infrastructure side, will have a much bigger impact on productivity in this country. Will have a much bigger impact on our standard of living. and advantaging that, which is what we're doing with the productivity super deduction. Like, it's an easy conversation to have about a pipeline because it's one thing we can see. But the reality is that there's much, much more to the Canadian economy, and there's much, much more to the future of the Canadian economy. And so we're attacking it on all sides.
Well, let's go to the big number. You've thrown. You're winning. You're winning.
No, I'm not. It's not a competition. We're all in this together. We're all in this together.
The big number you've thrown out is $1 trillion that you think you can get from private investments. And you've also said you've been going around the world. You're making these trade deals with other people. You've said we need to diversify away from the United States. So how much of those conversations did you bring into this budget? What I'm asking is, what is in this budget? Is in this budget that is a response to feedback that you've received about what it takes to get those investment dollars in Canada over anywhere else?
That's a great question. I think it reinforced. They're all great questions, just to be clear. Even the pipeline one was great, but it just went on for a little long. The reinforcement on the scope of the super deduction. I think that's important. Like, you got to make it easy. So sometimes these things get sliced too narrowly. I used, back with Howie, we used to work in the Department of Finance, and the tax department likes to keep things very narrow. If you're a business, you don't want to think about, and particularly if you're a foreign investor, one of the things is people don't wake up in the morning and think of Canada. And so when they think of Canada, it has to be easy for them to think about it. Okay, it's got the lowest tax rate for investment. I'm going to have regulatory clarity. There's lots of institutional, people know this, there's lots of institutional capital in Canada, and very strong banks, so I can get financed if I'm going to move forward.
One of your key message, and it came out in today's speech as well, but really over the last 6 months, is we must diversify away from the U.S., but you obviously can't ignore that will remain a key relationship for business and the economy. And I would love, that's key for a lot of these businesses. Might not be a pipeline, but certainly the U.S. Is key. There was definitely a tone shift by the U.S. when you became Prime Minister. I think everybody saw what that was. And I'm wondering if you could help illustrate for the room what drove that tone shift, what was different about what you brought to the table that had them a little bit friendlier towards us. And for these individuals in the room, like, how can they win in the U.S.? It's still important for business to win in the U.S.
It's hugely important, and it's hugely important where our trade relationship settles out. What caused the tone? I don't know. I think like almost anything in life, people respect you if you're straight with them, and I'll give another example with President Xi in China last week or so when I met with him. I mean, part of the conversation was just about, okay, how are we going to deal with each other, and what's off limits, and where are we going to actually discuss? I mean, so I think there's.
Is that similar with the U.S.?
The president can discuss anything. You never know where the conversation is going to go, to be honest. So he's got a very wide range of interests. With the U.S., so but for people, because it's we're all, it's a serious. There are a couple, I think, realities. One is that the U.S. policy, this is why things have changed, to the world is to charge access to their market. Okay, I mean, the president uses the example. Sometimes he says Costco. More often he says like a country club. Costco is obviously a lot cheaper than the country club. So we like Costco. Yeah, I like Costco. No. So one, they're going to charge access. We actually are not paying an access fee on most of our exports. 85% is tariff free. There's more that needs to come, particularly in and around AI and mass application of AI. Our AI strategy is going to come out in a few months, which will have a big focus on that. We're going to. If I can give you the kind of arc of what we're doing, and I'm going to oversimplify, which is that this budget, investment, generational investment, focus on that. Then what comes with that is skills, youth, getting people, youth, the next generation. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. So that people can take full advantage of it, so all Canadians can take advantage of it.
Okay, one more number before I wrap up. How many seats do you need to have a majority?
I can't remember.
Do you want to answer?
Maybe a couple.
Just a couple.
Just
All right.
a couple. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister.
So call your local
Carney.
MP
Yes.
if they're not a Liberal and tell them to come in. Okay.
Welcome to the Macrosphere, where numbers meet narrative. Today, we break down Prime Minister Mark Carney's bold new vision, a $1 trillion promise to transform Canada's economy. Less spending, smarter investing, and a call for the private sector to take the lead. But behind the optimism lies a risky bet. Let's decode the real economics of Carney's Great Canadian Reset. Prime Minister Mark Carney has introduced what he calls a balancing act, a policy that tries to merge fiscal restraint with national ambition. Rather than pushing Canada further into uncontrolled deficits, his approach centers on redirecting, not expanding, public spending. Carney's government plans to freeze non-essential growth and extract about $60 billion in savings. But those savings aren't disappearing. They're being reallocated toward targeted investments, defense, innovation infrastructure, and workforce development. Carney argues that this is about changing the very architecture of public finance. For decades, Canada has relied on spending increases to signal growth. Now, the government aims to show that efficiency and discipline can also create opportunity. He calls it a dual-engine strategy, a leaner state and an empowered private sector. This approach also protects what he calls what makes Canada, Canada, social programs, and the federal-provincial balance. By trimming bureaucracy but safeguarding key supports, Carney hopes to maintain political stability while injecting fiscal credibility back into Ottawa's books. It's a delicate equation: preserve trust, attract capital, and rebuild productivity. His critics insist the plan lacks boldness, that if you're already spending, you should go all in on corporate tax cuts. But Carney counters that blunt deregulation isn't strategy, it's surrender. Instead, his government is focusing on quality of investment, not quantity of spending. In his words, the risk is not to take risk. He wants Canada to invest with purpose and prove that confidence can be rebuilt through intelligent capital, not political theatrics. The cornerstone of Carney's economic agenda is the productivity superdeduction, an incentive designed to rewrite the rules of business investment in Canada. Think of it as a turbocharged tax break. Companies that reinvest in digital infrastructure, automation, AI systems, or green technology can deduct far more from their taxable income than ever before. The message is unmistakable. If you build here, you win here. Carney's economic logic follows a simple yet powerful chain. Private investment drives productivity. Productivity drives wages, and wages sustain national prosperity. But in recent years, Canada's productivity numbers have flatlined. Too much capital sat idle, while companies hesitated amid regulatory complexity and high costs. The superdeduction aims to break that paralysis. Unlike traditional subsidies, this isn't about the government picking winners. It's about giving every firm, from data center giants to mid-size manufacturers, a clear financial reason to modernize. As Carney told business leaders, "We've set the conditions. Now the private sector must decide to build." His team expects tens of billions in new corporate investment to flow into high-tech infrastructure and advanced manufacturing. The broader vision extends beyond tax savings. It's about psychology. Carney wants to reignite risk appetite. He's betting that once Canadian CEOs see clear returns from reinvestment, momentum will spread organically through the economy. That's how he plans to transform cautious capital into confident innovation. Still, critics warn that deductions alone won't fix Canada's structural drag. that without faster permitting, better trade logistics, and cheaper energy, private investment may still hesitate. Carney accepts that risk, but frames it differently. The government's role is to clear the runway. The private sector has to take off. It's a quiet revolution in how Ottawa thinks about growth. When the discussion turned to Canada's energy future, Carney faced one of the most politically charged questions. Why major projects, like pipelines, still stall? His response was immediate and unflinching. Because the future of oil exports is low carbon. That single line reframes an entire national debate. Rather than abandoning energy, Carney envisions transforming it. He argues that new development must be paired with carbon capture technology, creating an industry that both extracts and offsets. This strategy could convert environmental regulation from a perceived burden into a competitive asset, a differentiator that makes Canadian energy uniquely sustainable in global markets. It's a concept rooted in transition economics. Prosper by adapting faster than others. Carney says that Ottawa and Alberta are already cooperating on several carbon capture and clean hydrogen initiatives. He cites them as evidence that the grand bargain between growth and climate action is not theoretical. It's happening. Still, his tone acknowledges the complexity. Negotiations are delicate. Timelines are uncertain. But he believes progress comes through persistence, not political theater. Critics, however, accuse the government of suffocating investment with red tape, specifically Bill C-69 and emission cap policies. Carney dismisses that as mischaracterization, insisting projects are reaching federal desks. For him, the real obstacle isn't permission. It's perception. Canada must convince investors that it can execute major projects cleanly, safely, and profitably. That requires regulatory clarity, yes, but also national confidence. Ultimately, Carney's energy stance reveals his deeper philosophy. He's not fighting yesterday's battles about whether pipelines are good or bad. He's asking how to make the next pipeline smart, digitally monitored, carbon neutral, globally bankable. That's how he intends to turn climate obligation into Canada's next comparative advantage. Beyond borders, Carney is redefining how Canada competes in the global marketplace. He's pragmatic about the United States. It will remain Canada's largest partner, but dependency on a single customer is a structural risk. The world is charging access, he says, comparing U.S. policy to a membership fee. Carney's solution? Diversify without disengaging. That means deeper partnerships with Europe, Asia, and emerging markets, investing heavily in artificial intelligence and clean manufacturing. Canada's comparative advantage, he argues, lies in credibility, a stable democracy with sound banks, rule of law, and abundant resources. By combining those strengths with pro-investment reforms, Canada can become a preferred alternative to both China's opacity and America's volatility. In recent months, Carney has quietly intensified diplomatic outreach, signing trade memorandums, meeting with Asian ministers, and even holding dialogues with President Xi. His message is consistent. Canada is open for business, but on modern terms. Technology, sustainability, and trust are its new export pillars. For the private sector, this pivot opens enormous opportunity. Canadian mining companies could supply critical minerals for global EV production. Tech firms could co-develop AI solutions with European counterparts. Agricultural producers could expand into Asia's growing middle class. The strategy is less about chasing trade volume, more about capturing value chains. Analysts describe this as a shift from dependence to interdependence. It reflects Carney's central belief that resilience in the 21st century economy comes from optionality, multiple partners, multiple markets. If successful, it would not only protect Canada from geopolitical shocks, but reposition it as a connective hub between democracies and developing powers alike. For Carney, Diversification isn't diplomacy, it's national insurance. And then came the headline figure. $1 trillion. That's the scale of private sector investment Carney believes his plan could unlock over the next 5 years. To grasp its magnitude, that's nearly 40% of Canada's GDP, the equivalent of adding an entire economy the size of South Korea inside Canada. This projection isn't pulled from thin air. It's based on expected capital flows from pension funds, sovereign investors, and corporate expansions incentivized by the new tax regime. Carney's pitch to global investors is direct. Canada offers low political risk, high institutional credibility, and soon, one of the most competitive, effective tax rates in the G7. He's also banking on momentum from foreign policy wins. As new trade deals take effect and AI-focused collaborations emerge, global firms may see Canada as a strategic base for North American access without paying the U.S. entry fee. The trillion-dollar vision, therefore, is as much branding as economics, a narrative designed to signal scale and confidence. Skeptics question the math. Can the government's fiscal restraint coexist with such aggressive capital ambitions? Can private firms truly fill the gap left by reduced public spending? Carney answers with characteristic composure. We've advantaged the private sector tremendously. Now it's up to them. He views this as a national test, a measure of whether Canada still has the entrepreneurial courage it once claimed. If it works, Canada could see a surge in productivity unseen since the 1990s. If it fails, critics will brand it as optimism unmoored from reality. But Carney's wager is unmistakable. Prosperity now depends less on government stimulus and more on confidence, coordination, and corporate ambition. The trillion-dollar target isn't just an economic forecast. It's a psychological one. Every grand vision invites skepticism, and Carney's is no exception. Economists warn that Canada's structural problems, weak productivity growth, aging demographics, and sluggish innovation can't be solved through incentives alone. Some argue for deeper tax reform, others for slashing regulations altogether. But Carney insists that reform without purpose leads to instability. His focus is creating predictability, not chaos. He also faces political risk. Balancing fiscal restraint with generational investment is a delicate act. Opponents claim the plan's numbers don't fully add up, that savings targets will strain public services. Supporters counter that short-term discomfort is the price of long-term competitiveness. It's a debate between incrementalists and disruptors, and Carney is trying to be both. Internationally, Canada's credibility will hinge on execution. Investors may like the theory of low taxes and stable governance, but they'll judge the results by project speed, workforce readiness, and regulatory clarity. Even Carney acknowledges that ambition means little without delivery. The runway is clear, he says. Now we have to take off. Underlying it all is his central warning. The greatest risk is to stop taking risks. After years of economic caution and political gridlock, Carney wants to restore Canada's willingness to bet on itself. It's a theme that resonates beyond policy, a call to national mindset. Innovation, he argues, isn't born from certainty. It's forged in risk. Whether the trillion-dollar dream materializes or fades, this much is certain. Carney has reframed the conversation. Canada is no longer debating if it should compete, but how boldly it can. And that, in itself, may be the first step toward rebuilding confidence in the Canadian economy and in the nation's capacity to think big again. So, will Mark Carney's trillion-dollar gamble pay off? Or is Canada walking a tightrope between ambition and illusion? Let's keep the analysis going, because this story is just getting started. For full breakdowns, charts, and behind-the-scenes economic insights, subscribe, like, and share the Macrosphere, where we turn policy into perspective.